The mediator didn't look up when Blake said it. She prefers not to be involved in direct communication, he explained calmly, like he was offering a helpful clarification. She struggles under pressure. One mediator nodded. The other typed. I didn't interrupt. I didn't correct him. I sat still while my absence was explained for me and entered into the record. Blake continued, outlining timelines, decisions, shared preferences. Each one delivered with confidence. Each one accepted without question. The meeting moved on. No one asked me anything. No one checked. By the time it ended, the narrative was complete. Official. Filed. I signed where I was told to sign and left without saying a word. I sit in my car afterward, hands gripping the steering wheel, heart pounding. The heat of injustice burns through me. Anger. Disbelief. The instinct to go back inside and interrupt, to demand they strike that sentence from the record, to tell them I don't struggle under pressure, that I've managed crisis communications for a living, that Blake is lying. But I don't move. I stay there, watching people walk past my windshield, and I understand something that stops me cold. Correcting him would have made me look exactly like the version of me he just described. Defensive. Emotional. Unable to handle the situation calmly. If I'd interrupted, if I'd challenged him publicly, it would have reinforced his narrative. Confirmed that I struggle. That I can't manage my reactions. That I need to be spoken for. So I didn't defend myself. I watched how easily his words settled as fact. How quickly the professionals accepted his framing without asking me directly. And the question burns in my mind. Why didn't anyone ask me? The answer is simple. Because Blake spoke with confidence. And he stayed silent. And silence, in that room, became consent. I leave the parking lot and drive through the city. Traffic moves normally. People go about their day. But something irreversible has just happened indoors, in a quiet room with beige walls and professional mediators who will never know they were lied to. My reputation shifted. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly rewritten in a document I'll probably never see again. My ex tried to control the story. The phrase locks into place as I pull into my driveway. Not tried to hurt me. Not tried to win. Tried to control the story. Because that's what this was. Not a fight. Not an argument. A narrative. One he shaped carefully, delivered calmly, and filed officially before I even understood what was happening. I sit in the driveway, engine off, staring at my house. The house we used to share. The life we used to build. And I make a decision right there. I will not argue with a system that rewards calm lies. I will not defend myself in rooms designed to accept whoever speaks first. I will do something else. Something he won't see coming. I will document everything. Let me introduce myself properly. My name is Simone Cross. I'm a communications consultant. I've spent 12 years building a reputation for clarity, precision, and composure under pressure. I've managed PR crises for corporations. I've handled sensitive negotiations. I've been the person clients call when things fall apart and they need someone who won't panic. That's who I am. That's who I was known to be before Blake. Before the marriage. Before the separation. Before that mediator typed a sentence into her laptop that framed me as fragile, avoidant, unable to handle direct communication. The contrast sits heavy in my chest. The version of me in that record doesn't match the version I've built over a decade of professional credibility. And the emotional dissonance is almost unbearable. Because I know the truth. But the system doesn't care about truth. It cares about what's written down. And what's written down now is his version. Not mine. I close my eyes and make myself a promise. I will not argue. I will not explain. I will simply ensure that every future record contradicts the story he just told. I start thinking back. Revisiting moments that once felt considerate but now feel calculated. Early in the marriage, Blake offered to handle emails when family conflicts arose. "You're stressed," he'd said. "Let me take care of it." I'd been grateful. Relieved, even. He volunteered to speak for us at gatherings, to summarize decisions we'd allegedly made together, to represent our household in conversations I wasn't part of. I thought he was being supportive. Taking pressure off me. Letting me focus on work while he managed the social logistics. But now, sitting alone in the quiet of my living room, I see it differently. He wasn't supporting me. He was documenting around me. Every time he spoke on my behalf, every time he framed my absence as preference rather than coincidence, every time he answered questions directed at me, he was building a record. Not in writing. In memory. In perception. In the minds of mediators, family members, mutual friends. And by the time I realized what was happening, the narrative was already formed. Solid. Established. Repeated so often it became fact. I realize with sickening clarity how long this record has been forming. Years. Not weeks. Years. After the separation was finalized, people didn't confront me. They just drifted. Invitations stopped arriving. Group chats went quiet. Messages I sent were read but not answered. At first, I thought it was normal post-divorce awkwardness. People not knowing whose side to take, staying neutral by staying distant. But then I started noticing the pattern. It wasn't neutrality. It was something else. Concern, maybe. Or discomfort. I ran into an old friend at the grocery store. She smiled, asked how I was doing, said she'd heard things had been hard. "I'm fine," I told her. "Really?" She nodded, but her eyes said she didn't believe me. And I realized, standing there in the produce aisle, that my absence had been explained for me. Blake had told people I was struggling. That I needed space. That I preferred not to be reached out to directly. He'd reframed my silence as fragility. And people, being kind, had respected that boundary. A boundary I never set. The emotional weight of being quietly discarded settles over me. Not because I was attacked. But because I was protected from things I didn't need protection from. And that protection isolated me completely. I start keeping records. Not dramatically. Not out of anger. Just methodically, the way I'd approach any project that required clarity and precision. I create a folder on my laptop. Label it with the date of our separation. Inside, I save emails. Calendar invites. Financial documents showing transactions Blake claimed were mutual but weren't. Screenshots of messages where he speaks for me without asking. Text threads where decisions are announced, not discussed. I don't editorialize. I don't add commentary. I just preserve reality. Because reality, I've learned, gets rewritten fast when there's no record. The emotion here is cold resolve replacing pain. I'm no longer surviving emotionally. I'm preparing institutionally. Because if Blake ever tries to control the narrative again, if he ever tells another mediator or lawyer or mutual acquaintance that I'm too fragile to handle my own affairs, I will have proof. Dated. Time-stamped. Undeniable. The folder grows slowly. One document at a time. And with each edition, I feel something shift. Not power. Clarity. I know what happened. And now I can prove it. Blake moves on quickly. Within 3 months, he's in a new relationship. Within 6, it's public. Social media fills with photos of them together. Polished. Happy. Confident. He speaks more freely now, telling stories about the past, about our marriage, about why it ended. I hear pieces through mutual friends. How he tried. How I withdrew. How he had no choice but to move forward. The stories are always calm. Always reasonable. Always framed as reluctant truth-telling. And people believe him. Because Blake is good at this. He's always been good at this. But the faster he talks, the more I notice something. Inconsistencies. Small ones at first. Dates that don't line up. Events he describes differently depending on the audience. Decisions he calls mutual that his own emails contradict. I don't call him out. I don't correct anyone. I just keep adding to the folder. Because the faster he moves, the sloppier he gets. And sloppiness, in the long run, is what exposes people. Not anger. Not confrontation. Just time. And documentation. And patience. A routine review is triggered 6 months after the separation. Nothing dramatic. Just a standard financial audit related to our joint accounts. Both of us receive a letter requesting clarification on certain transactions. Blake responds first. I can tell from the tone of the follow-up email that he's explained things his way. Framed decisions as mutual. Summarized my involvement in terms that minimize it. When my turn comes, I don't explain. I don't defend. I don't write paragraphs justifying my position. I just attach documents. Bank statements showing dates. Emails showing who initiated what. Calendar entries showing I wasn't present for meetings he claimed I attended. The response is brief. Professional. Factual. 2 weeks later, I receive another email. This time, the questions are directed at Blake. Not me. The tone has shifted. Not accusatory. Just careful. Precise. The kind of careful that comes when someone realizes the story they were told doesn't match the evidence. For the first time since the mediation, I feel something new. Not joy. Not satisfaction. Relief. The system is looking past his charm. And on his end, there's only silence. More questions surface over the next month. Dates don't line up. Decisions Blake called mutual aren't supported by the record. Expenses he claimed we agreed on were never discussed. The auditor asks for documentation. Blake provides explanations. Long ones. Detailed ones. But explanations aren't evidence. And the gaps are widening. I watch it happen from a distance. I don't engage beyond what's required. I answer questions briefly. I provide documents when asked. I stay neutral, factual, uninvolved emotionally. And slowly, the contradictions pile up. Not because I'm attacking him. But because his own words don't match his own emails. His own timeline doesn't align with the calendar. His own version of events shifts slightly every time he retells it. I realize something important. I no longer need to watch him closely. I don't need to anticipate his next move or prepare counter-arguments or stay one step ahead. His own words are doing the work. And all I have to do is let the record speak. The relief is quiet but deep. I'm not fighting anymore. I'm just waiting. Time passes. Months turn into a year. I remain unchanged in my responses. Brief. Factual. Documented. Blake grows defensive. His emails get longer. His explanations more detailed. His tone shifts from calm confidence to careful justification. The auditor notices. So does the lawyer handling our final asset division. Questions that used to be directed at both of us now focus more heavily on him. Not because I'm more credible, but because I'm consistent. And consistency, over time, builds trust. Blake's inconsistency builds doubt. The emotional payoff is restrained but real. I'm no longer reacting. I'm being validated. Not loudly. Not publicly. But institutionally. In the systems that matter. In the records that last. One afternoon, I receive a brief email from the mediator. A correction has been entered into our file. The language about my communication preferences has been revised. It now reflects that both parties participated equally in discussions and decision-making. It's a small change. A footnote, really. But it erases the sentence Blake spoke in that conference room. And that erasure feels more powerful than any argument I could have made. People begin reaching out again. Not to apologize. Not to explain their distance. Just to reconnect. A former colleague invites me to coffee. A friend texts asking if I'm free for dinner. A family member mentions casually that they'd heard I was doing well. The shift is unmistakable. I'm no longer fragile in their minds. No longer difficult. No longer the person who struggles under pressure and prefers to be left alone. I'm neutral again. Human again. Just Simone. The person I was before Blake rewrote me. I don't ask what changed. I don't need to. I know. Time passed. The narrative Blake built couldn't sustain itself without constant reinforcement. And once he stopped being the primary voice in every room, once other people started seeing me directly instead of through his filter, the false version faded. My reputation didn't need saving. It needed time. Time for people to notice I wasn't falling apart. Time for the record to speak louder than his stories. Time for truth to do what truth does when you let it breathe. It surfaces. Quietly. Inevitably. Without drama. And once it does, the lies lose their grip. Blake's opportunities start to stall. Nothing explodes. No scandal. No public confrontation. Things just don't land the way they used to. A job opportunity he mentioned falls through. A professional connection he'd been building goes quiet. Trust, I realize, doesn't stick to people who talk too much. And Blake talks. More than ever. He explains more, tries harder, offers longer justifications for decisions that shouldn't need justification. The effort exposes him further. Because people who are telling the truth don't need to work that hard. They just state facts and move on. Blake can't move on. He's stuck in the story. Revising it. Defending it. Trying to make it hold under scrutiny it was never designed to survive. I hear about it secondhand. A mutual acquaintance mentions he seemed stressed. Another says he's been quieter lately at social events. A third notes he's changed jobs. Again. And I understand, with quiet clarity, that narrative control has a shelf life. You can shape a story for a while. But if the story doesn't match reality, eventually reality wins. Not loudly. Just inevitably. The final review concludes in the spring. 2 years after the separation. The auditor closes the file. All discrepancies have been addressed. All questions answered. The outcome is procedural. Formal. Blake's access to certain shared accounts is limited. His authority to make decisions on my behalf is formally revoked. No blame is announced. No fault assigned. Just outcomes. Clean. Official. Permanent. I receive the notification via email. Read it once. Then close my laptop and sit in the quiet of my apartment. The feeling that washes over me isn't victory. It's completion. The kind of deep, bone-level calm that comes when something you've been carrying finally gets set down. My name has been restored. Not in conversation. In writing. In the records that matter. In the systems that last. And Blake's version, the one he spoke so confidently in that conference room 2 years ago, no longer exists anywhere that counts. It's been replaced. Quietly. Officially. With the truth. I don't celebrate. I don't tell anyone. I just exhale. Long and slow. And let it be over. I rebuild. Not loudly. Not performatively. Just steadily. Work stabilizes. New clients arrive. Referrals increase. Relationships that had gone quiet during the marriage come back to life. Not all at once. Gradually. Naturally. I start saying yes to invitations again. Start initiating plans. Start using my voice on my own terms, in my own time, without wondering how it'll be reframed later by someone who wasn't there. The emotional release is deep and earned. I laugh more easily. Sleep more soundly. Stop checking my phone obsessively for messages that might need defending or clarifying or correcting. My life expands into space that used to be occupied by hypervigilance. And one morning, months after the final review, I realized something that almost makes me cry. I haven't thought about Blake in days. Not once. Not even in passing. He's no longer a presence in my mind. Not a threat. Not a wound. Not even a memory I have to actively avoid. He's just gone. Faded into irrelevance. And I'm still here. Whole. Clear. Free. I closed the folder on my laptop one last time. The one I created 2 years ago, labeled with the date of our separation. I don't delete it. I just archive it. Because the records don't need to be active anymore. They've already done their work. Blake's version faded because it couldn't survive scrutiny. It was built on control, on confidence, on the assumption that saying something calmly makes it true. But truth doesn't need volume. It just needs time. And documentation. And patience. Mine didn't need defending. It was always there. Waiting. Recorded. Undeniable. I think about that conference room. The mediator typing. Blake speaking. Me staying silent. And I realize now that my silence wasn't weakness. It was preparation. Because I knew, even then, that arguing in that moment would have cost me credibility. So I let him speak. Let him build his story. Let him file it officially. And then I spent 2 years quietly dismantling it. Not with emotion. With evidence. The last line settles in my mind like a closing door. Records don't argue. They wait. And they outlast.